All right, so today I want to talk about a topic of Think and Grow Rich, how wealth really works, and understand the different tiers of wealth. When I kind of figured out this concept, based on my own experience, it really blew my mind and it changed the way that I looked at money. So I'm gonna talk about the three different tiers. It's gonna be obviously saving, investing, or compound interest, and then a store of value. And this is something that you heard before, but I don't think you've heard it this way before. So stay to the end, and I think it's going to change your whole perspective on money. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So I decided to talk about this because I was talking to a friend yesterday, and we often have the conversations of money, money, money. And, a lot of times he's like, man, it's so hard to make money. It's so hard. It's so this. And I used to hear people on social media talking about it's not hard to make money. Like, it's your mindset. It's your mindset. And, a lot of times we come up with, "Oh, those are the gurus. They're trying to sell you." And sometimes that is the case. But I started unpacking that. Like, what if there is truth to that? Like, what if it really is your mindset? And so I started to understand this principle. So I was talking to my friend yesterday, and he's an artist, right? And like I told you guys, I make candles, I do other things, but he was getting frustrated because he's like, man, art has been slow. Haven't been making as much money as I usually make with art. And I told him, I said, well, I said one thing we have to understand. I said you're getting frustrated because of a business that you've built based on a luxury item, like. And I'm not saying you can't make a lot of money from art. I'm not saying that. But I said, and I'm gonna talk about this to store value later, but I said usually art, just like candles, that is a luxury item. That is not something people are buying, all the time, right? And a lot of times people bring up, well, you got famous artists like Picasso and Basquiat and this, that, and the third. And I told him, I said, now that is value. That is a different thing, which I'm gonna talk about later in the video about how Basquiat can be this amount of price, and what I'm saying, Picasso this price, and then your prices is different. You know, but one of the things that I told him, I said, one, art is a store of value. And I said, secondly, I said your prices reflect whatever your value is to the market. So there was a time when he couldn't charge a lot for art. And then as time went on, he could charge more. Why? Because his value went up. Why? Because he started to have more like celebrity clients, or, influencers, or, social media people or famous people that would buy his art. So what does that mean? That increased your store value of art. So now you can charge $2,000, $5,000 for a piece that you might have once charged 500 for, right? Because of the store value. But I'm getting too far ahead of myself. So in talking to him about that, I told him, I said, even if you have a store value, I said, one, there are only so many paintings that you can make. So even if your value does go up, which is what we hope to do, you're still capped at your like earning potential for art. I said, because you're getting mad about you building a business based on a luxury item, which is almost like a seasonal item, right? When people making a lot of money, they're gonna spend money on extra stuff. When they're not making a lot of money, people are gonna spend money on necessities. It's the same way when it comes to any other business. Like if I'm doing AI versus making candles, right? AI is something that's popping right now. That is something that people use every day. The store value is going to be different. And like I said, I'm gonna talk about store value later, but it applies to working and investing and entrepreneurship. So when we're talking about saving, right, or when we're talking about working, there is a cap of how many hours you can put in your job today. It doesn't matter if you work 40, 60, 80 hours a week, your income is capped, right? If you are expecting to make, millions of dollars or whatever, you're not going to make it just by working and saving. It's not going to happen. Like, that is the reality of money. It is not going to happen. And the reason why I say this is because you now have to worry about, or you have to understand how money works as a game. And I'm not saying this in the guru sense, but I'm saying like how the system of money works. So if I know that I can only save a certain amount of money, if I can only work and save a certain amount of money, then I have to realize, one, how much money do I want? And then two, what does it realistically take me to get that amount of money? So first off, I know that I can only save so much money, right? So the second tier of that, and first off, if you still with me, just drop a like, a comment, let me know that you with me right now. So the second part of that is investing, right? Now, yes, when you save money and then you invest it, your income has now like increased over time. So it's like, okay, if I put $500 a month for the next 30 years, I have $1 million when I retire because of compound interest, right? But on that same token, the only way you're going to get to 10 million or 50 million or 100 million is by how much money you put in the market or how long your money is going to be in the market. But the reality of you getting to 100 million, 200 million, 500 million, or a billion in this lifetime is not likely based on how much money you can put into the market. So once again, your income potential is kind of capped, even though it's a lot more than what you would make based on just saving. Your income potential is capped because of the fact that you make money based on putting money to work. So you make money based on the interest rate and how much money you put in the market. Even if you're talking about trading, people say, well, I can trade my way to wealth. Yes, but you still have to have money to trade. Because if you're not and you're over leveraging, or you're like, hey, I'm going to turn this $50 into $5 million, then you're just gambling at that point. You're not really trading with a risk assessment. So it's also about how much money you make. And so obviously the more money you make, the more money you can put in. So you have level one where it's like, okay, I can save as much as I can save, and then I can invest, and that can get me from, let's say, the 100,000s to the low millions. We'll say even 10 million, right? Now, when we're talking about the third level of that, because we know that each level has its own particular cap, right? So we talking about the third level of that, let's say the 100 millions. 100 millions to billions. We're not even going to talk about Elon Musk trillion, because there is no way for you to save or invest to get $1 trillion in this lifetime. If I'm wrong, drop it in the cat in the chat. But even if you're trying to get to the billions, I don't know that there is a way that you can make $1 billion from saving and investing in this lifetime. It's just no way, because you will probably have to put $100 million in there, or start with $10 million, or start with $50 million, right? So when people, for example, like the Jeff Bezos, people are gonna say, well, they started with handouts and this, that, and the third, which is true. And that does play a part. It's not the only part, but it does play a part, because if I have money to invest, then I can make my money go. So it's like if I started with $0 versus if I started 5 million, I put 5 million in the market. Obviously, my potential to get 100 million is going to be a lot easier than me trying to start from zero. It's probably not going to happen, which means I then would have to change my motor vehicle to get $100 million, right? And so that's the third part. The third part is value. I know that I can only make so much in income. I know that I can only make so much really in the market based on how much money I put into the market and the interest rate. Even if you say, hey, the interest rate went up 40% year over year for the past 10 years, you're still not going to make $1 billion. You're still not going to make $100 million based on $500 a month. You'll probably, I say, maybe get to 10 million. You know what I'm saying? This is just like the guesstimations. But even if it's not exact numbers, the principle still kind of is the same, right? So the third thing is value. So this is when like the entrepreneurship come in and the big business comes in, right? Because it's how much value do you provide? Value doesn't always mean ethical. Value doesn't always mean morality. Value doesn't always mean tangible. And so this is what happens when you see a lot of billionaires get rich, or drug dealers get rich, or people who are exploiting people for money get rich, because it's what is the store of value, right? For example, I'm gonna take it back to job terms. If I'm a teacher and I make 50K a year, although teachers should get paid way more than that, versus if I know that tech people are getting paid 100K a year, which one does society kind of say is more valuable? I'm not even gonna say more valuable. Which one do they put more money into? Do they put more money in the education, or do they put more money in the tech? When they break down the budget, what does the money go to? Does it go to education, or does it go to tech? Now, if you're doing tech education, then now you have the best of both worlds, right? But if I'm going into tech versus education, my cap for making more money is higher, because the value is there for tech. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So when you start thinking of money in this way, it changes the way that you think of money, because now it's no longer how much can I work, it's now how much value can I produce. And the gurus and people, stuff like that, they don't tell you that, because they be like, well, It's about value and it's about solving a problem and all this bullshit that they be saying. I'm sorry to cuss about all this stuff that they be telling you, which is partially true, but they don't tell you the reality of it is you have to go where the money is to make the money. Yes, you can create money from, let's say, an idea that might not normally be fruitful. So for me, if I want to make a candle brand, yes, I probably can make millions of dollars for making a candle brand. But what is going to be easier? Is it going to be easier for me to make money from a candle brand? Or is it going to be easier for me to make money from tech? Or is it going to be easier for me to make money from social media? Or is it going to be easy for me to make money from the internet, right? Or is it going to be easier for me to make money from real estate? How much quicker can I get to that amount? Does that make sense what I'm saying? So this is what you have to think of. Another side story how this applies, right? So the other day I did a video about VHO, which is like a delivery app, because I wanted to kind of test, like, okay, people are doing these delivery apps to make more money, but is it really feasible? And by the time I did the math and the gas and stuff like that, I'm like, man, you're losing money. And even if you're not losing money, you're kind of losing time, which you could be using that time to put in something that has a store more value, right? Now, this does not apply to people who are building their base and just trying to get some money together. But a lot of times, and this is why mindset is so important, because a lot of times when we're grinding and hustling, a lot of times we like, man, like I gotta make more money, which a lot of times we are decreasing our store of value because we want to get the money now instead of building for what's later. So for me, I'm like, okay, them 4 or 5 hours, I was out longer than that. I say 6, 7 hours that I was out to make less money. I could have put that 6 or 7 hours to working on my YouTube channel. I could have put that 6 or 7 hours into understanding how the algorithm works, or making more videos, or editing, or a skill that could potentially make me more money. So when they're saying, oh, you got to get a skill, and oh, you got to do something of value, and oh, you got to do what the market is telling you to do, all they're saying is like, bro, what is a store? What is going to potentially get you the money a lot quicker? Like, you can go that long route, but what is going to get you there faster? You know what I mean? And so you can do it ethically, right? And that can be hard. You can do it, based on morals, and that can sometimes be tough depending on what the store value is. But this is why billionaires get rich even off of exploitation, because what is the value? If I know that, hey, I'm making chocolate and it's going to take me $12 to make this chocolate if I go to Africa and get the cacao trees and all this other stuff, versus where I can, source homegrown, I can cut some ingredients out and I can make it cheaper, even though it's not good for people, the value is there because people want to save money. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Even if it's not ethical, even if it's not moral, you know what I mean? Even if it's not the right thing to do. So you have to understand, I'm capped as far as how much I can make and save. Even though I can make exponentially more money investing, there is still a cap based on how much money I put in the market. So the next thing is, what do I do that is going to bring some value? So for me, and going back to my friend who makes art, if you're still here, drop it in the chat, like, comment. I'm wrapping it up. Going back to one of my best friends that makes art, is I told him, I said, man, listen, you're making art and you're getting frustrated because the art pieces aren't selling. But I said, if you are making content, right, and you're making content on, I guess, technically the right platform that will allow you to monetize content, and you kind of have to choose which is best for you, but the platform that's going to let you monetize content the best. I said that one piece, once you sold it, it's gone. But that one video, once you learn how to market it and monetize it, that video is out there as long as YouTube exists, as long as Instagram exists, as long as TikTok exists, because the video doesn't go anywhere. It's there. So that can that can put that can potentially make you more money in perpetuity than you selling a piece of art for $1,200. Now, it doesn't mean don't sell the art for $1,200 or $50 or $500, but it's understanding. Like for me, for example, I know that the money that I'm saving right now and investing, I'm not just investing into the market. I'm investing into business. I'm investing into social media. I'm investing into YouTube, so that way I can potentially make more money in the long run without having to work 80 hours a week for the rest of my life. Does that make sense what I'm saying? Like, We get that a lot of time when it comes to people get it when it comes from saving. People get it when it goes from saving to investing. But a lot of times they don't understand the transition from investing to something of value. If I create a business that's of value, what would it took me 100 years to become a billionaire, 200, 300 years, now I can do it in 10 because I created a business. And obviously I'm in an arena that has the value, the government funding, the government contracts. I can make more money in a less amount of time, even though I'm still doing the work. But it's what am I creating that is of value? Even if your likeness, like Elon Musk, is of value, even if his businesses, quote unquote, aren't always, they don't always work, right? He is the brand. Whether we like it or not, he is the brand. So how can you get $1 trillion IPO when your business only makes $1 billion? Because you're Elon Musk. You know what I'm saying? It's not because necessarily the thing works, but it's because of the store of value that Elon has being Elon. Now, will this come out as something else later on down the line? It could potentially do that, but I don't think people understand, like, one, the difference between hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars, the difference between the millions and hundreds of millions, and the difference between 100 millions and billions and a billions and trillions. Like $1 trillion is like 100 million billions or something like that. Like that is a lot of money. $1 billion is like 100 million times 10, which is really $1 million times what was it, a million or 1,000 or something like that. And that's how you get $1 billion. People don't understand that it is a catastrophic difference. And so when there's a catastrophic difference, the way that you have to approach those things is with a totally different mindset. So when I learned that, now that I'm doing things based on what I want to make money from, which means that I'm going to the arena that is going to produce the money that I want. If you don't want to be a billionaire, you don't do things that you need to do to make $1 billion. If you don't want to be 100 millionaire, you don't do things for that. If you just want to be a 10 millionaire, you do things that bring that. If you want to be a millionaire, you do things that bring that. So 100,000 there, you do things that bring that. And each level has its own sacrifice. Each level has its own decisions that you have to make in accordance with whatever that dollar amount is, which is how the book Think and Grow Rich correlates, because they tell you to get a dollar amount and get mindset. And although that is also a business strategy, I think the principles are effective because in order for you to know where you're going, in order for you to get where you're going, you got to know what you want to do. So when they're saying, "Hey, I want 100,000," and you figuring out how to create a plan for 100,000, it's not just saying I want 100,000, bring 100,000 to me. You know what I'm saying? Although I guess that could work theoretically, but it's saying, okay, I want 100,000. What things do I need to do to get to 100,000? Is me working my job, you know, this job for the next 10 years, 80 hours a week? Is that going to get me 100,000? Or do I need to start acquiring the skills for the jobs that pay 100,000 or can pay me more money so that way I can get to $100,000 quicker? Does that make sense what I'm saying? Or do I need to save the money that I have so that way I can invest in a company that can make me $100,000, right? And talking to my dog on YouTube, and he probably gonna comment on this video. We was talking the other day about how, a family member of his owned a candle lounge. I was like, that's something I want to do. And he was like, not to put their business out there, but he was like, ultimately this family member decided to go back to work because the offer they had was more, it aligned more with what she needed, and finances and means and stuff like that. And so she went to that, you know what I'm saying, because it provided a certain type of lifestyle for her. And I understood completely because it's saying, okay, if I got this candle lounge and I'm making, let's say, $75,000 a year or $100,000 from this candle lounge, but I gotta pay people, I gotta pay out expenses and payroll and stuff like that, as opposed to if I take this offer, they're gonna pay me $200,000 a year, and all I gotta do is 40 hours a week. What Unless the candle thing is just what you really, really want to do, it won't make sense financially, because then I worked that job for 2 years. I can go back and still open me up a candle lounge. I don't even got to work in it. I can hire somebody to work in there. Why? Because the value is different. You know what I'm saying? I was able to spend 2 years doing this to go make money to do that. So it's understanding the store value, it's understanding the different levels of wealth, And it's understanding the mindset that you need to have to get there. And the way that you have that mindset is you understand the amount that you want, and then you understand what it takes to get there. And what I mean, what it takes to get there, I don't just mean the work. I mean, what do you need to do? What areas, what arenas do you need to be in that's going to pay that? For example, if you're a YouTuber, you know that certain YouTube channels pay more than others. You know what I'm saying? Because of the value that businesses, place on that, or the money that the businesses spend and add in that industry. Finance is going to be the highest because that's where a lot of money flows. It's the finances. Gaming might not be as much because gaming is still a growing niche, but that's also not necessarily something that people need every day, unless you're a gamer. Finance, that applies to everybody. Every single human being it applies to, unless you live off grid. So it's understanding the arena that you got to go in. It's understanding the dollar amount that you want and being okay with understanding what comes with that. So, for example, if I know that I want $10 million, right? But I know that I don't want to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, now I have to see, well, what could potentially make me $10 million without doing X, Y, and Z. I want it to be ethical. I want to be, I want to have my morals intact. I want it to be good for people. So now you have to look and see, okay, well, my pie was this big, now it's like this. And then you have to choose from, let's say it was 10, now it's 5. Now you have to choose from those 5 things. Which one of these 5 things do I want to do and spend my time on to make 10 mil, instead of like doing these things over here that's only gonna make you 100,000, and now you wasting time and energy when you could have put that same 40 hours into this, or the same 20 hours into this. And so this mindset has changed me altogether. I would never look at money the same ever again. I wish it didn't take me so long to figure this out. I hope this video is helpful for you. I know it's a lot of information to take in. Tell me what the best part, if you made it to the end of the video, tell me what your best part of the video is. Tell me what you learned. Tell me your perspective. But wow, like this is blowing my mind. I now understand money in a different level, to the point where I now understand like how money can be easy to make and a lot easier to make, because it's really, what are you putting your focus on? Are you putting on your focus on the things that make? And it doesn't mean that where you start is where you end. So if you got to work a job making 50,000, and then, you know what I'm saying, build a business on the side, that's what you have to do. But it's understanding, okay, what could give me a better rate of return? Putting 10,000 that I invested into my business, or putting 10,000 into the market, or doing both. And then what business do I want to do? Do I want to do a business like candles that can potentially only make me 100,000, 200,000 a year? Do I want to build an app or a tech company or something that I already know that works? AI, clipping up AI videos or something that I already know that works, that is proven to work, and I can put my money to work for me in that particular field. You know what I'm saying? So it's doing stuff that already work, and you just figuring out how you put your own twist on it instead of trying to make things from scratch when you don't need to. So I hope this video helps. Like, comment, subscribe if it does. Till the next time, peace.